It was a typical day on a bustling flight from New York to Los Angeles, the hum of passengers settling into their seats, the rustle of bags being stowed, and the faint rumble of the plane's engines filled the air. Among the travelers was Elijah, a well-dressed black man in his late 30s, quietly preparing for the flight ahead. He looked out the window, lost in thought, unwinding after a demanding week. In the aisle, a flight attendant named Linda moved briskly. Her name tag was pinned neatly to her uniform, her demeanor as polished as her attire. However, the smile she offered each passenger seemed rehearsed, and her eyes betrayed a faint impatience. As Linda approached Elijah's row, she threw him a quick, assessing glance before moving on, and Elijah sensed a faint discomfort, a feeling he knew all too well. As the flight took off and settled into a steady rhythm, Elijah leaned forward to catch Linda's attention, hoping for a glass of water. He asked politely, but Linda's response came with a sharpness that startled him. "Can't you wait until I get to your row?" she snapped, her tone curt and dismissive. Surprised but maintaining his composure, Elijah replied, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be a bother. Just a glass of water, whenever you have a moment." Linda's lips thinned, and she shot him a cold look. "You'll get your water when I decide," she muttered and walked away without another word. Other passengers had taken notice, some casting sideways glances, while others looked down, uncomfortable but unwilling to get involved. Elijah let out a quiet sigh and returned to his seat, reminding himself to remain calm. It wasn't the first time he'd faced biases, subtle or otherwise, but he felt a gnawing frustration. Letting it go, he reasoned, was the best course. He had faced worse and had learned that confrontation rarely helped in these moments. As the flight wore on, Linda returned to Elijah's row, but her tone had only worsened. She glared at him, accusing him of being disruptive, even claiming he'd been causing trouble. Her voice grew louder, drawing the attention of nearby passengers, who watched with wide eyes as she berated him. "I was only asking for water," Elijah replied, steady but visibly stunned. "You people," she muttered under her breath, her words laced with contempt. Then, as if driven by some inner fury, she raised her hand and struck him across the face. The slap reverberated through the cabin, drawing gasps and silence from the shocked passengers. Elijah's cheek stung from the impact, but he held his ground, refusing to let the moment define him. Slowly, he raised his gaze to meet her eyes, his expression calm yet resolute. As Linda retreated, something about her caught Elijah's eye, a small tattoo of a dove on her wrist. His mind flashed to his close friend and longtime employee, Naomi, who had the exact same design. Naomi was family to him, someone he had known for years, who had committed herself to promoting equality and inclusion at his company. He couldn't shake the possibility that Linda might be connected to Naomi. Rising from his seat, Elijah walked calmly toward the front of the plane, his gaze set on Linda, who still stood in the aisle, clearly flustered. "Linda," Elijah said, his voice calm but firm, "I'd like a word with you." Linda rolled her eyes, ready to brush him off. "What now?" she snapped, her voice laced with irritation. "Haven't you caused enough trouble?" Elijah took a steady breath. "That tattoo on your wrist, does it mean anything to you? Do other members of your family have it?" Linda frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Elijah's eyes softened slightly. "I know someone with that exact tattoo. Your sister Naomi Clark is my employee. I believe she's your sister." Linda's face paled, the anger melting into disbelief as his words sunk in. She blinked, struggling to find words. Elijah continued, his voice unwavering. "Naomi has worked for my company for years. She's not just an employee. She's become family to me. She's spent her time fighting for inclusion, building awareness around discrimination, and making sure everyone feels valued. Now, here I am, treated as less by her own sister. She would be heartbroken to see this." Linda's mouth opened in shock, and she looked down, her shoulders slumping under the weight of realization. I didn't know," she stammered, barely audible. "I had no idea." Elijah's voice was calm, yet resonant. "That's the problem, Linda. So many don't realize until it's too late. The harm has been done. It's not just about me, it's about the prejudice that hurts everyone, including the people you love." Linda's eyes filled with tears as the passengers looked on in stunned silence. Her demeanor shifted from defiance to shame, and she struggled to keep her composure. Elijah wasn't there to humiliate her. He wanted her to understand the depth of her actions, not just for him, but for her and her sister. "I'm not here for an apology," he continued. "I'm here to ask you to change, not just for yourself, but for the values that your sister fights for every day." With the cabin in complete silence, Elijah extended his hand toward her. "It's never too late to change, Linda, but it's up to you." With trembling hands, Linda took his hand, her face streaked with tears. A round of applause broke out in the cabin, a spontaneous response to the powerful moment. The applause wasn't just for Elijah, but for the chance he had offered her, a chance to choose a different path. As the plane touched down in Los Angeles, the passengers disembarked in reflective silence. Linda stood by the exit, her face pale and somber, a shadow of the confident attendant who had begun the flight. Each passenger passed by with a nod or a look of understanding, silently acknowledging the transformation that had just taken place. Elijah took his time leaving, and as he neared the exit, he caught Linda's gaze. Her lips parted as if to say something, but no words came. She simply nodded, the gesture laced with remorse and gratitude. Elijah offered a faint smile in return, a signal that change was possible, but the path forward was hers to walk. In the terminal, a middle-aged woman approached him. "Excuse me," she began, her voice filled with admiration. "What you did back there, it was remarkable. I don't think I could have done what you did." Elijah smiled humbly. "Thank you. It wasn't easy, but anger only fuels more anger. I hope to give her a chance to see things differently." The woman nodded, visibly moved. "You made a difference, not just to her, but to everyone on that plane." The next day, Elijah arrived at his office, where Naomi greeted him with her usual bright smile. But she noticed something different in his demeanor, and, concerned, asked if he was all right. "Naomi," he began slowly, "something happened yesterday that I need to tell you about." Confused, Naomi listened as Elijah recounted the events of the flight. As he spoke, her face shifted from surprise to sorrow, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. "Linda," she whispered, her voice barely holding back tears. "My sister. I can't believe she would do that." Elijah reached across, gently patting her shoulder. "I didn't tell you to cause trouble between you two. I know how hard you've worked for equality, and I believe that Linda can change, but she needs support." Naomi wiped her eyes, nodding. "Thank you for handling it with grace, Elijah. You've shown her a side of humanity she hadn't seen." In the days that followed, the story of the incident on the plane spread quickly. Another passenger had captured part of the exchange on video, which soon went viral, sparking debates around discrimination, empathy, and personal transformation. The public outcry forced Linda to face her actions on a broader scale than she'd ever anticipated. Linda reached out to Elijah, requesting a private meeting. They met at a quiet cafe, away from the media frenzy. As they sat across from each other, Linda offered a heartfelt apology, her face etched with remorse. "I'm ashamed," she admitted, her voice cracking. "Since that day, I've done a lot of soul-searching. I've enrolled in a diversity training program, and I'm volunteering to learn more about what I failed to understand." Elijah nodded, encouraged by her sincerity. "Change is a journey, Linda. What matters is that you're taking steps forward. Keep going." Linda continued her path of personal growth, dedicating herself to breaking down the biases that had once defined her. The process was long, filled with reflection and hard conversations with herself, her sister, and others she had wronged. In time, she emerged as a more empathetic and understanding individual, committed to making a positive difference in her world. For Elijah, the experience reinforced his mission to foster equality and understanding. The encounter on the plane became a symbol, a reminder that prejudice is not inevitable and that even the most rigid biases can be dismantled with patience and empathy. Months later, Linda and Naomi came to Elijah's office together to thank him. Naomi expressed her gratitude, and Linda spoke earnestly. "Your strength and kindness helped me change. I owe you that." Elijah smiled, his heart full. "We all have the power to change. The important thing is that you took the step." From that point on, Elijah continued his work, a quiet force for empathy and change. And as he went forward, he knew that even the smallest actions could have lasting impacts, proving that kindness, understanding, and the courage to confront prejudice could indeed transform lives.